everyone, my name is Reggie and welcome to my channel. Today I'm really excited to be sharing with you some fall book recommendations. So I know I'm definitely not alone when I say that fall is my absolute favorite time of the year. I really love the shift in weather. I really love the cozy vibes that this season brings about, and I love the colors. I really love the colors. When I think of reading in the fall, I definitely think about books that have darker, heavy topics, have a creepier, dark mood, or are super atmospheric. So every book I'm recommending you today has definitely one of those elements, if not more, in it. We'll start out with my most recent read book that's on this list, and that's Sadie by Courtney Summers. I think this book is perfect for fall. It definitely has that dark storyline going on. I read this a few months ago and I really absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite books I've read this year. This is a book that's told in dual timeline and dual narratives. It follows our main character Sadie, whose younger sister was murdered, and it follows Sadie in one timeline as she is trying to find the murderer, and in the other timeline it follows a journalist who is producing a podcast that's based on Sadie disappearing about a year later. I think the writing of this is very smart and clever. The timelines do match up pretty seamlessly, so it's not too long after you get a reveal in Sadie's timeline that the journalist finds that reveal in his investigation that's happening a year later. But of course he doesn't have all the pieces of the story, and only you as the reader hearing from Sadie and from the podcast understand what's really going on. I think the podcast element of this book is so strong because not only is it interesting and enticing and makes the audiobook one of the best audiobooks of all time, but it also has this really strong narrative it's trying to put across. It provides this idea of idealizing and overconsumption of this narrative about the missing woman, and how media oftentimes just is saturated with content that is focused on tragic things that happen to women, as if their tragedy is our entertainment. I think if you like The Female of the Species, you'll definitely like this. This definitely is dark in a similar way as that book is. There definitely is some content warnings or trigger warnings I want to give you for this book. So those include fire, alcohol or drug use, death, obviously, murder, rape, and pedophilia. As you can tell by those trigger content warnings, it's a heavy story, but it has an important message. I think it's beautifully told, and I think it's a wonderful book. Perfect for the fall season. Coming off the heels of that, we'll go a little bit lighter, and I'll recommend to you The Raven Cycle, or the first book in this cycle is called The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is a book that just in general brings me so much joy. This book tells a story of Blue Sargent, who is a wonderful girl who lives in a family of very strong and wonderful clairvoyant women. They all have powers, of course, they're clairvoyants, but Blue has no ability to tap into the supernatural realm. She is not clairvoyant. She can act as an anchor that enhances the other clairvoyant's powers, but she does not have any powers of her own. However, she has been prophesized all her life that if she kisses her true love, that person will die. It's a pessimistic prophecy, and it's deterred her from making friends or having a lot of connections or relationships outside of her home. Her home life is really strong, but outside of that, she doesn't have a lot of friends, or she's never had a relationship, things like that. That is until this book begins and takes off when she meets a group of boys called the Raven Boys. They are very privileged boys who go to a private school near her. Even if Blue is the type of person to make friends, these are definitely not the kinds of people she would make friends with, but she somehow falls into their group and becomes super close friends with them as the entire group goes on a supernatural journey to follow these magical ley lines to find a dead Welsh king, and legend has it that this dead Welsh king will grant you a wish if you find him. The relationships, the friendships in this book are so great. The dynamics between Blue and her family are amazing, but really what sells this book as fallish is the writing Maggie Stiefvater puts forth, and the atmosphere that writing presents. Is the most atmospheric book I've ever read. It really takes you into that world and sucks you into this world that in some moments hardly makes sense, and yet makes perfect sense just because of the way Maggie Stiefvater is writing it. It's beautiful, and I love it so much. Running with the atmospheric vibes, I'm next up gonna recommend The Diviners by Libba Bray. This is an atmospheric book if I've ever read one. Set in 1920s New York City, this book follows Evie O'Neill, who is from the Midwest but recently has been forced to move to New York City to help her uncle, who is a runner of an occult museum. And while she's there, her and her uncle basically go to hunt down a paranormal, yes, a paranormal serial killer. This book is truly remarkable and one of a kind. The atmosphere is so strong, especially in the audiobook. I think just like the Raven Boys, this world jumps off the page through Libba Bray's writing. You get magical elements, you get spooky, creepy vibes, you get this ghost paranormal story, all in this wonderful book. It's big, it's long, but I've never read a long book so fast. It's super engaging and, like I said, very atmospheric. I definitely recommend you read this one if you haven't already. And now's the time, because it's perfect for fall if you like atmospheric books in the fall like I do. I technically like atmospheric books all the time because it's like one of my buzzwords, but super good for fall. Next up, I'm gonna keep up with the kind of creepy theme that The Diviner's presents and recommend to you the Mara Dyer series. This is actually a trilogy, but the third book is still on my shelf. I specifically grabbed these two because these books are hunkers at 500 pages each, and I read these so fast. I read both of these in a little over 24 hours. I just could not stop reading them. They are that good. This book starts off with our main character, Mara Dyer, who wakes up in the hospital with no memory of how she got there. As it turns out, the night she was brought to the hospital, her best friend and 2 other friends that she was with that night passed away as they were in like an insane asylum that had been closed down for many years, and the building just crumbled. After Mara Dyer gets out of the hospital, she then goes on a journey to figure out what happened and why it seems that death and destruction always follow her. I never thought I liked paranormal romances until I read this one, and it's really good. Definitely has a romance element. That's definitely a big element to it, but I think it's super smart, clever, and like I said, super readable. It's so fast. But definitely creepy. There's some trigger warnings, I don't know in this particular book, but in the series for suicide, self-harm, mental illness, death, obviously. This is fast-paced, engrossing, has a cute love story, it's interesting, dynamic, and I definitely think it's perfect for fall. The last book I want to recommend to you today is something that I recommend to people every fall season, and it's something I recommend outside of fall, but definitely every fall because it is so perfect for fall. It's spooky and creepy and wonderful and perfect, and it's also just so happens to be my favorite graphic novel series of all time. Yes, it beats out Saga. I said it. And this is the Lock and Key series, written by Joe Hill, illustrated by Gabrielle Rodriguez. This book is about a family who, after tragedy strikes, has to move across the country to their old family manor. And in the Locke family house, supernatural and paranormal things start occurring. The kids find these keys, and these keys open doors to magical worlds, mystical things, random things happen, things get bigger, things get smaller. It's so much fun to see what each key will do. It's also super spooky and ominous because definitely the things these keys do are not always good. There are so many fun, wonderful moments in this book, but there's also so many creepy, terrifying moments in this book. Definitely gives you those spooky autumnal vibes. I love it so much, but it's also just a wonderfully crafted narrative and a wonderful story from beginning to end. This is a 6-volume story. There's also some side stories, but the main crux of this story following these characters is 6 volumes, so you can definitely speed through it if you want to. I will honestly never stop recommending Lock and Key because I love them that much. They're so good. Those were my 5 book recommendations to read this fall. Go ahead and let me know if you've read any of these down in the comments below, or let me know of a book you think I should add to this list. I post new videos on this channel every week, so you should definitely consider subscribing, liking this video, and like I said, commenting down below. It can be found in between uploads on my Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads at dontstopreadin, so definitely consider following me there. But that is all for today's video, so I'll see you in my next one. Bye!